Let's now focus on education, and there are growing calls for the review of how boarding senior high schools provide meals for students following the shortage of foodstuff in many schools across the country. While the Education Ministry says it is mobilizing foodstuff for the schools, some parents are considering taking up the cost of feeding their wards. Some education watchers say it is the reason to review the modalities for feeding students. A report by Judith Awachitando.
Feeding in senior high schools has always had its challenges, but since the advent of the free senior high school policy in 2017, those challenges have scaled up. Feeding alone accounts for about 70% of the entire free SHS budget, according to the Africa Education Watch. Although there have been calls for its review, government has maintained a rather rigid posture on the policy. But with reports resurfacing this year of running food shortages in schools, threats to shut them down by authorities, and swelling frustration by parents, these calls are being intensified as the cost of living crisis seeps into the schools. But why are food shortages in senior high schools so rampant? Kofi Asare, Executive Director of Africa Education Watch, an education policy research organization, says it comes down to money.
The challenge we have is a financing problem. There is a financing deficit this year. As we speak, I'm not sure if the Ministry of Finance has disbursed 20% of the 2.2 or so billion cedis.
In the meantime, parents are feeling the pinch of the slowdown in delivery of food. Salifu has 2 daughters currently in boarding school. He says if the situation isn't quickly addressed, he'll have no other choice than to take up the full cost of his children's feeding.
I'm a concerned parent, and I sent my ward there, to be educated. And then when it comes to food, and then she complained that the food is not sufficient, or the feed is not all that good, yes, to her liking, definitely I have to be supportive. I have to dip my hand deep in my pocket and then give her something.
The president of the Conference of Heads of Assisted Secondary Schools, Alhaji Yakub Abubakar, says parents have had to pitch in, but thinks a long-term solution to the problem is important.
If earlier there was the understanding that the state was going to carry everything on its shoulders, but it is becoming clear that it is a huge burden on the state, and so other stakeholders like parents should also come and support, I'm sure they'll look at it and maybe give way for that to happen.
Executive Director of Africa Education Watch, Kofi Asare, says parents have no choice in the short term but to contribute to the feeding of their wards, but says the long-term option requires significant policy changes.
Parents who have the capacity to support the schools should go there and support them. The medium to long term, we must begin to look at asking parents who fall within the middle and then upper income brackets to begin paying for the feeding of their children in senior high schools, and then continue to allow children, of parents who fall within the low income bracket to enjoy free feeding.
The challenges are glaring, but until government finds a long-lasting solution, students remain the most affected. Judith Awachitando, TV3 News.